Canada will be a police state by Christmas. We got to keep you safe from the cyber terrorists and fraudsters, so we're going to authorize the government to search your computers without a warrant. It actually gives federal cabinet ministers the power to kick a Canadian off the internet. You're not charged with a crime, you're not convicted of a crime. That order can say that the order has to be secret. That's one of the characteristics of communist, fascist regimes, is they operate in secret. Nobody knows where the line is drawn, and it's going to have this chilling effect on speech. Zap, your bank account's frozen. You can't run your business. You can't pay your bills. We're going to see a lot of Canadians getting prosecuted. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Canada is very rapidly moving towards the social credit system that China has in place.
World War III is already happening.
This is a house of cards, and it is in the process of collapsing right now.
You're going to see an economic crash, the likes of which we've never seen.
Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. Today on the channel we have John Carpe, founder of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms and the author of Corrupted by Fear, How the Charter Was Betrayed and What Canadians Can Do About It. He's a defender of individual rights in Canada, has a law degree from the University of Calgary, and is a fierce advocate for free speech and constitutional liberties. I recently came across a video that you did, John, entitled "Canada Will Be a Police State by Christmas." And of course, being a hardline gun rights activist that I am, I was intrigued. And it seemed like we're aligned on many issues. Now, I don't know too much about you beyond that video, so I don't know if we're going to be fully aligned politically. I don't think that ever is a possibility with anybody. But I certainly was agreeing with what you were saying in that video. I'm hoping today you can kind of elucidate these bills that are coming down the pike. They're taking the guns. We had that whole Emergency War Powers Act enacted back during the truckers' convoy, which froze people's bank accounts. Now, what are these new bills that they're wanting? It seems like these guys are insatiable when it comes to their thirst for power. So what is Bill C-2, Bill C-8, and Bill C-9, and why should we be concerned?
So all three bills are now before the House of Commons in second reading. So Bill C-2 was introduced a few months ago as the Strong Borders Act, and I think it should be called the Strong Surveillance Act. It gives, it's 140 pages long, which is unfortunate. It makes it very hard for average Canadian citizens or even lawyers that are working full-time for an organization like the Justice Center. Makes it very hard to wrap your head around it because it amends various pieces of, amends various federal laws, amends the criminal code, introduces a brand new piece of legislation called the Authorized Access to Information Act, which will empower government officials to search without a warrant to search Canadians' computers and cell phones. So it's C2, Strong Borders Act. There's a part of it that actually changes our immigration policies and our refugee policies and what rights refugees or refugee claimants, I should say, what rights they have or do not have when they enter Canada, et cetera. So part of it, you could say it's the Strong Borders Act, and it does focus on that. But then it's got all this other content. For example, gives Canada Post the right to open letter mail without a warrant. It criminalizes the use of cash in amounts greater than $10,000, which is really dangerous because it's a big step towards centralized digital currency, or central bank digital currency, and so that's very dangerous, right? Even though most of us won't use $10,000 cash when donating to charity or when paying a bill or making a purchase, that's not the point, right? The point is that as free citizens, if I want to use $15,000 cash for whatever, a down payment on a house, I should be allowed to do that. So that's C2. I don't know if you want me to dive in further, but that's kind of the tip of the iceberg.
What is their justification for needing to open mail? Like, what could that possibly have to do with regulating border flows? I mean, I understand, I guess, if you're shipping something over the border, But if you're talking about immigration and refugee, I mean, are they worried there's going to be a refugee in the box? Like, what's the what's the issue there?
Well, it's a pretext. It's to keep you safe. Politicians never take away our rights and freedoms without offering a nice sounding pretext. So you have all these restrictions on guns, for example, forcing people to sell them or they get confiscated. It's all about safety and security. We got to keep Canadians safe. Therefore, we're violating your privacy rights and we're violating your property rights. But that's okay because we got to keep you safe. So with Bill C2, we got to keep you safe from the bad guys. Therefore, Canada Post should be able to open letter mail without a warrant, right? We got to keep you safe from the cyber terrorists and foreign state actors and fraudsters. So we're going to authorize the government to search your computers, search your cell phone without a warrant. It's to keep you safe. It's safety and security. We're protecting you. We're going to prevent you from using cash to donate to charities and to make purchases. Why? Oh, well, we got to crack down on money laundering. There's all these bad guys that are, there's drug dealers and, people that are forcing women into prostitution and they're misusing cash. So we got to take away your right to use cash because we got to track down money laundering. Like, it's, and it doesn't even make any sense. I mean, ultimately, in a cashless society, I'm sure the government would find ways to stop, you're abducting children, abducting women into prostitution. In a cashless society, I'm sure the government would still have law enforcement to crack down on the bad guys, right? So they don't need to get rid of cash. So yeah, it's always safety and security is the pretext. We got to keep you safe from hate. That's Bill C9. We can get into that a bit more if you want. We got to keep you safe from misinformation and disinformation. So government has to control the internet.
Yeah. So they're trying to make the case then that this is like a human trafficking issue primarily, that they need to search people's computer and prohibit the transacting in cash over $10,000, that is the justification. I'm just trying to think, like, in this 140-page bill, there must be some justification. And how is the bill being received? I guess two questions there. Like, how do they justify that? There must be some rationale for that. They can't just throw that in there for no reason. And what has the reception been in Parliament? So
the Conservatives, they like the parts on the immigration and refugees, but they said they're voting against the bill. There's been, people say that some people say contacting your MP makes no difference. There has been a public outcry since this Bill C2, the Strong Borders Act, since it was introduced a few months ago. And it's been from across the political spectrum. We've had the Canadian Civil Liberties Association publicly denouncing Bill C2 as violation of privacy rights. We've had the Justice Centre, my organization, has commenced a petition to keep cash legal and oppose Bill C2. So we've come at it from that angle, and we agree also that the violation of privacy is a huge issue. We defend privacy rights. You've had this law professor, Michael Geist at the University of Ottawa, who is probably seen as kind of a left-wing guy more than a right-wing guy, but doesn't really matter. But he's been very critical of Bill C2. We've had law professors criticizing the new police powers and giving the federal government powers to search our computers and cell phones without a warrant. On and on and on. So there's been this outcry. So what the government has done, Bill C2 is still before the House of Commons, but they've pulled out just the immigration and refugee components of Bill C2, put them into a new bill called C12. They're going to try to fast track C12, get it through. As far as I know, there's a good chance the Conservatives will vote in favor of it. So the Liberals are in minority. They'll get through their bill on the borders and the refugees. And then they're still going to want to move ahead on Bill C2. But the fact that they've kind of split it up and they're fast tracking their immigration and refugee and actual border stuff.
Yeah.
They're fast tracking that now, and they're leaving behind, and it might not pass, the stuff on surveillance and violation of privacy rights.
Well, that's a positive development then, but it still is unnerving to think that they tried in the first place, right? And that they had the audacity to try to sneak that in there. And if they did once, they'll try to do it again. So I think it's good that people remain vigilant with the issue. With respect to the Canada Post opening mail bit, now Customs can open mail and check stuff. So does that mean that Canada Post is effectively then like policing to a certain extent? Like, wouldn't that mean that they were having to report or having to have some sort of, police element involved in that process?
Well, Canada Post already has the power to open packages if they have strong grounds for suspecting that there are drugs, but they don't have the right to open letter mail, and that's a distinction. Oh. So, Canada Post has, when they suspect that a package might have, let's say it's full of cocaine or illegal drugs or child or whatever, if they suspect that, they can call the police, and they can have the police go deliver the package to the house. Police can dress up as a Canada Post employee and could go knock on the door and deliver it maybe after opening it, whatever. So that they have power with packages. But what Bill C2 would do if it's passed in the current form is it extends that to letter mail. So if you're just sending a letter to a friend, or Christmas card or birthday card or whatever, then Canada Post would have the right to open letter mail as well. So it's an expansion of their search powers.
And it's not just to find drugs, it's to read the contents of the message in that letter.
Well, yeah, because if a letter has just paper in it, right, and if they've got, dogs that are trying to sniff out for drugs or whatever, if it's not a package, so it's just that expansion, right? It's like bit by bit. They, as you mentioned before, you've got for the internet, you've got the Online Streaming Act that gives the CRTC power over the internet, over every website, every podcast, every video cast, to insist on Canadian content, which they get to define what's Canadian or not, which is ridiculous. I think we ourselves as Canadians can decide that ourselves. We don't need the government telling us that our podcast or our website is not sufficiently Canadian and then imposing regulations on it. So we've got, that was a big step towards government control of the internet, the Online News Act to make it illegal or impossible to send news links to other people via Facebook. And then C2, C8, whenever you want to get into that gives federal cabinet ministers the power to kick Canadians off the internet. It's absolutely frightening.
Well, yeah, let's talk about that, because I'm curious to know how this works and what the reception has been to that bill as well, and what the purpose is. The state. So
C8, C8 is the Cybersecurity Act, and it actually gives federal cabinet ministers the power to kick a Canadian off the internet by giving the public safety minister the power to order a telecommunications services provider, which is any company that provides you with website access or the internet, telephone. They can order a company to kick Mark Smith off the internet. And the minister's order can be secret so that Mark Smith is not allowed to talk about it. And if Mark Smith wants to take it to court, he's going to need $100,000 in the bank to hire lawyers to start a court action, which is going to drag on for 2 or 3 years. And he might not even win the court action. So why? Well, it's the same. We're going to keep you safe. We've got, fraudsters, and we've got hackers, and we've got foreign terrorists. We've got domestic terrorists. So therefore, we need to give the federal government the power to kick individual Canadians off the internet. preposterous and frightening, right? But some people, they buy into the rhetoric. It's like, oh yeah, you got to keep us safe from cyber terrorists. So, fraudsters, hackers, thieves, criminals, you got to keep us safe. So yes, the federal cabinet should have the power to kick a Canadian off the internet. And off phone service, right? So the government could order,
right.
Again, my imaginary Mark Smith, right? Apologies to any Mark Smiths that are listening, but the government can say, well, Mark Smith, tell the companies that are providing him with phone and internet to kick him off. He'll find himself suddenly it's very hard. I mean, he can go talk to his next door neighbor, talk to his wife, and maybe he'll have some friends that can spread the word that he has been kicked off the internet. Maybe they'll be courageous people. Although then again, if the cabinet minister's order says that it has to be secret, well, then Mark Smith, then there's a problem. He's not even allowed to talk about it. So that's Bill C8, cybersecurity, giving federal cabinet ministers the power to kick Canadians off the internet and their phone services.
Well, if those people have done something wrong enough to justify being kicked off the internet, shouldn't they have been charged with something? Or because it seems like, okay, if you're saying that they're breaking the law in some way, wouldn't you just charge them with that crime as opposed to, secretly playing this game of banning them off the internet? Like, it seems like something is missing there.
Yeah, that's the whole problem, is that it's preemptive. I've got no problem with somebody being if you're charged with drug trafficking or collaborating with terrorist activities, terrorist plot. Okay, so if you're actual terrorist, drugs, whatever, but you got to be charged. And then you've got to get convicted. After you're convicted, the current laws allow the judge to impose conditions on you. So if you're convicted of a crime, or if you're on bail, so you've been criminally charged, but your trial's not for a year and a half away, a judge has the authority to say that one of your bail conditions so that you can not be in prison for a year and a half while you're awaiting trial, one of your bail conditions is you're not allowed to use the internet. Okay, well, it's harsh, but in some cases that can be appropriate. What Bill C8 does is you're not charged with a crime, you're not convicted of a crime, and the government can then still have the power, if the minister believes that you're a threat to the national telecommunications security. If the minister believes that you're a threat, the minister can order you off the internet. Well, it's like if the minister believes that you're donating to that, it's like freezing bank accounts. There's no court authorization. They froze hundreds of bank accounts, and the people whose bank accounts were frozen, they hadn't committed any crime. They hadn't been charged with anything. They had donated money to a group that the prime minister disliked, and zap, your bank account's frozen. You can't run your business. You can't pay your bills. So C8 would do that. Very similar, that the federal cabinet minister can go, zap, you're kicked off the internet.
So when you say that the telecoms provider must keep it secret, so they can't disclose the reasons. So if the person calls and says, hey, why was my account shut down, that they can't provide any reason, or they're not under any obligation to do that?
National security. The minister's order could contain a provision in there. So the Bill C8 says that the order that the federal cabinet minister issues against or to the telecommunications service provider, which is again internet, phone, that order can say that the order has to be secret. So hugely problematic, right? That's one of the characteristics of communist, fascist, national socialist, theocratic regimes, as they operate in secret. In a free country like Canada, we have a longstanding principle of transparency and openness, so that if the court's if you're going to get charged, I mean, okay, it's embarrassing, right? Like, let's say you get charged with impaired driving, right? But it's public. People find out you've been charged with impaired driving or any other crime. So it's embarrassing. However, ultimately, it's in the best interest of a free country because then there's no secret prosecutions, right? The government can't secretly prosecute you, charge you with impaired driving in secret, and then prosecute you in secret and convict you in secret. It's all public, right? But Bill C-8 allows the federal cabinet minister to issue these orders, and the order can state this order must remain secret.
It seems like this would be difficult to enforce because they could ban somebody from accessing or having their own internet connection, but they can't necessarily ban them from accessing the internet via, publicly available Wi-Fi or their friend's Wi-Fi or something like that. So does this extend then to social media platforms? Would they be obligated to ban these individuals off of social media, or is that already covered on the Online News Act?
Bill C-8 would also empower, they would empower the federal cabinet minister to order Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or what have you, to order these companies to kick somebody off the internet. Now, I don't know the technical details of how that works. If they have a Canadian affiliate, is there a Canadian provider of Facebook, for example, or is there just one international company based in the US?
Right.
American companies do not have to. The government of Canada has no authority over foreign companies. I mean, they could issue a request, right? But they can't really enforce it. But so I don't know the technical aspects, but they do have the power over any Canadian company. So if there's a Canadian company that is somehow involved in providing a Canadian with the internet or providing a Canadian with social media, again, I don't know the technical details of the technology, but the federal cabinet minister can order any Canadian company to do anything or to refrain from doing anything. Really broad language in the act. It actually says to do anything or to refrain from doing anything if the minister believes it's a threat to cybersecurity in Canada, which is just a huge, broad, unfettered. Yeah, technically, the act says, if the minister has reasonable grounds for believing that there's a threat to cybersecurity. The problem is with that language is so broad. We all believe that our own opinions are reasonable. We believe that our own decisions are reasonable. So to say that the minister needs reasonable grounds to believe that there's a threat to cybersecurity, yeah, it sounds good on paper, but practically speaking, the minister is going to believe that his own opinions are reasonable, and so it's a very broad power to kick Canadians off the internet.
It seems like it's laying the groundwork somewhat for some kind of digital ID, perhaps. There's a lot of rumblings about this, and it would seem as though this would be a way to penalize people who were dissident. So potentially setting the groundwork for, everybody, in order to access the internet now, in order for us to enforce this, we're going to have to make it so that if you want to access the internet, you need to plug in this ID, whether it's a public Wi-Fi or it's your friend's house or whatever. You have to have, every device has to have some sort of, identifier that is tracked back to you or something. Like, I could see this being kind of the Trojan horse for that.
Well, in Bill C-2, under the Authorized Access to Information Act, so Bill C-2, the Strong Borders Act, also has a provision that empowers the federal government to demand that companies turn over their subscriber information and IP addresses. And so this bill, and then you've got C-9, which is the Combating Hate Act, which is going to unleash never before seen numbers of prosecutions for criminal hate speech against Canadians. And it's an expansion of the existing law. It has been a crime in Canada for decades. The willful promotion of hatred against a group that can be identified on the basis of race, ethnicity, skin color, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, religion. It has been already a crime to willfully promote hatred against an identifiable group based on one of those criterias. Okay, so it's not It's kind of funny. A few years back, everybody was asking me, can Trudeau get charged for hate speech because he's promoting hatred against people that didn't get injected with the COVID vaccine? And the short answer is no, because that's not one of the grounds, right? Hate speech is illegal if the group is identified on the basis of race, religion, sexual orientation. But if you want to promote hatred against bankers or lawyers, or people that didn't get injected, that's perfectly legal. Anyway, I digress. These laws have been on the books for a long time, but there's been a restraining factor that if a local police, local crown prosecutor wants to prosecute a Canadian for hate speech, they need the permission of the Attorney General. So there's a review process whereby the Justice Minister has to look at that proposed prosecution and give it a sober second thought. And so we've had very few hate speech prosecutions in Canada. We seem to be getting, one or two per decade. It's very, it's not used very often. What Bill C9 does is it gets rid of the requirement that the Justice Minister look at it. So it turns the authority over to local police, local crown prosecutors without a sober second thought. So if Bill C9 Combating Hate Act passes into law, we're going to see a lot of Canadians getting prosecuted. And hate is a subjective emotion. They can't define it. They're trying to, and it's ridiculous. They say that hate, mocking, ridiculing, offending, discrediting, and hurting the feelings of people is not hate. Dislike and disdain is not hate. However, if you cross over into detestation and vilification, that is hate. So nobody knows where the line is drawn, and it's going to have this chilling effect on speech. In the United Kingdom, in 1 year, there were 12,000 people arrested for hate speech. 12,000 people arrested for, speaking out against immigration policies on Twitter, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be weaponized to forward whatever sort of ends they have in mind. What do you think the ultimate goal is with all of this? Is it something nefarious, or is it just simply the government centralizing power more and more? Is it just the natural tendency of the government to want more consolidation of force, or is it really that they have some end game in mind? This is where we get into the realm of tinfoil speculation, but it's hard not to when you have this multifarious attack on civil liberties. It's hard not to think the worst is coming.
Well, the reality, and you don't need a tinfoil hat to know what's going on in China with their social credit system. In China, if you criticize the government on social media, you will find that you can get cut off from airplane travel. Chinese New Year is in January, February. It's a very important to the Chinese. A lot of people will travel to go visit their parents or grandparents. There's a lot of travel going on for New Year's. But if you are critical of the government on social media, you find you're not allowed to get onto a train or a plane or a bus. You can't travel. Your credit scores, right? So if you speak positively about the government, or if you can go for a year or two without getting a fine for littering or jaywalking, the government has this tight, intimate control of behaviors, and so you get the social credits. If you're a good citizen, you can get a better interest rate on a bank loan. If you're a bad citizen, you can't board a train, plane, or a bus. Now, you could say we've got the same thing in Canada, that if you violate the criminal law, you could get locked up in jail. If you kill somebody, you're found guilty of murder, you can be locked up in jail for a long time. But the difference is, so the criminal code doesn't lead to the intimate management of the details of your life and my life. It's basically, look, don't kill, don't steal, don't cheat, don't defraud people, don't assault, don't threaten. There's some pretty obvious crimes there. As long as you don't do those things, you've got this broad latitude of freedom. In China, with the social credit system, you lose your rights and abilities. You get kind of put into a box where you can't travel and you can only buy groceries, and you can't send your kids to a good university. The state has this detailed, intimate control of your life. That is the reality in present day China. And with Bills C2, C8, C9, C63, the Online Harms Act, which died, but they're going to bring back, the Online News Act, the Online Streaming Act, you put all of that together, Canada's very rapidly moving towards the social credit system that China has in place.
Yeah, it seems like a very pernicious creep towards authoritarianism. Now, you say that this police state could emerge by December. Is that when these bills are expected to be voted on or determined?
Yeah, and between now and Christmas, these bills are going to be voted into law as currently worded, or there's going to be amendments, and it's not going to be as bad, or they'll be defeated. The Liberals have a minority in the House of Commons, and so, but they're three seats shy of a majority. So all they need is for 3 votes from the NDP or the Bloc or the Conservatives on any of these bills. So the opposition parties have to be a united front against these bills. I don't know if they will be or not, but it's positive that we saw that because a lot of Canadians contacted their MPs to say that Bill C2, the Strong Borders Act, is terrible for violating privacy rights. Because so many people contacted their MPs, they have split that off, and they're fast tracking border security provisions and leaving the rest behind. So what I would urge Canadians to do is contact your member of parliament. I don't care if he or she is Liberal, Conservative, NDP, Bloc, Green. Contact your member of parliament, send an email and say, vote against bills C2, C8, C9. And it's going to have an impact because politicians mostly are followers, not leaders. And when they sense that their bill is hugely unpopular, they back off, they back down.
All right, guys. So there you go. There's a very simple course of action that we all can take in order to hopefully postpone what appears to be inevitable, unfortunately, at this point. But I think if we can continue to push back, then maybe the pendulum will hopefully swing in the other direction. It seems like some of these laws are kind of contradicting one another. Like, I mean, you're going to ban people from using cash, but then you're also going to ban them from the internet. I think they almost have to do things like this for Canadians to wake up to the reality. And we're starting to see that when they push too hard, that's when people kind of clue into what's going on. And that's unfortunately because everybody's just struggling to make ends meet nowadays. It's until, it really approaches your doorstep that you don't really realize the need to act. And when they do go too far, that's usually when it forces response from Canadians. That's what we're seeing in the gun community. And it's finally gotten to the point where they push too hard. And now Canadians are starting to wake up to this reality that these laws are unjust. And so now they have to start rolling certain things back. So, let's hope that they bite off more than they can chew. Is there anything else people should know about yourself or these bills, or is there anything that we haven't discussed today that you'd like to share with my audience about, bringing more awareness to these issues?
People who are interested in getting a newsletter from the Justice Centre, you can visit our website, www.jccf.ca. So that's Justice Centre Constitutional Freedoms, jccf.ca. And you can sign up for an email newsletter, and we've got our court cases. We've got a team of 10 lawyers all across the country suing governments federally, provincially, everywhere. So check out our website. And I often say, and I firmly believe, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. So if you're a good person, do something, and then evil will not triumph.
And I will post a link to your YouTube channel in the description below. Really super easy for people to do. Just go and subscribe. And go check out the book. I'll post a link to your Corrupted by Fear book as well. John, thanks a lot for coming out, and hope to touch base with you in the new year, and hopefully we have better news to report at that point.
Hope so as well. Thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
The best way to support this channel is to support yourself by gearing up at CanadianPreparedness.com, where you'll find high-quality survival gear at the best prices, no junk, and no gimmicks. Use discount code PREPPINGGEAR for 10% off. Don't forget, the strong survive, but the prepared thrive. Stay safe.